Hello, fellow nerds, geeks, and supporters of indie pop culture creators. Aaron Nabus here, alongside my co-host, Alex Benedicto, and we thank you so much for tuning into the Hall 8 Show. Joining us on this episode is the writer of the comic book California Inc., Arthur Ebuen. The second issue of California Inc. is currently on Kickstarter until Friday, September 15th, 2023. We're looking forward to talking about that and so much more. Welcome to the show, Arthur.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Usually we like to, get to know, especially our guests who are here for the first time, get into their origin story. Because all our heroes have origin stories, right?
Am I a villain? Those are the more fun characters.
Right. Well, it's your story's still being written, so who knows?
Sure.
By the end of this podcast, we'll see. But what was teenage art like? Where did you grow up, and what were you into at that age, pop culture wise?
Oh man, teenage art. I grew up in Paradise Hills here in San Diego. So if you're in San Diego, you probably know where Morse and Bell Junior High is at. So that's literally like right in front of Bell, kind of where I grew up. Comic books was a huge escape. And you talk to my closer friends, I had a ton of comics but never read them. It's purely for the art. So I started my career as an illustrative, figurative artist, but nerd version of art. The teenage kid loved him some Jim Lee. The Tick was huge. Lots of comics. Wolverine was big too. Again, never read much of it. I had long boxes full of comics just for reading, just for looking at the art, and anything else about my art? Me as a kid with art. Huge on Transformers and G.I. Joe. Those are big. I don't know if do you two remember Bionic 6? That was my morning.
Me too.
Yeah, Saturday morning cartoon. That was my thing
before school.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was pretty much what I grew up on, for sure.
I can appreciate that. Wow, Bionic 6. That's a blast from the past.
Yeah.
Which one was your favorite?
I don't remember the names.
Me neither.
Loved it. I don't remember the names. I do remember the Centurions, those three guys, right? Yeah, that was huge. I loved, what's his name? Max? No. Which one was the air guy?
I don't remember.
Right? Yeah. Anyways, apparently I loved everything for the art, but not for the story. And here I am as a writer. So how funny is that?
Wow, ironic. Can you sort of briefly tell us about your creative journey? I mean, starting your professional career as an animator for Futurama and The Simpsons, then doing graphic design for Jack in the Box, and then working as a writer producer for video and film production, and now creating and writing your own comic books. I mean, that's one heck of a journey.
Yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, visual artist first. And you all mentioned, you all met my son just a little bit ago, and he left the room. But around his age, like I mentioned, I loved drawing. I love art. Who didn't love Jim Lee? Who didn't love, Spawn? And who didn't love Eric Larson's, big green dude, dragon,
Savage Dragon.
Savage Dragon. Correct. So Image was blowing up at the time, and so my dream was always to be an animator. That was kind of the thing, and as immigrants, art wasn't like an acceptable thing, as you all probably understand. So pursuing art was kind of something that was, I wouldn't say frowned upon, but it wasn't really encouraged either. So, out of high school, I wanted to get into Cal Arts, and I actually got declined out of high school. That was a heartbreaker because, I didn't know what I needed to have in my book to get in. And, which is basically, tons of figurative art and studies and just basic, structure. And so broke my heart. That was the only school like I applied to. And so I was like, screw it. I'm going to move to LA. And I spent the next 3 years with, I'm sure you all know Bobby Rubio. Mm-hmm. His younger brother, Ron Rubio, was my roommate for 6 years in LA.
Oh, wow.
And we roomed together in LA for 6 years. We both said, let's go to LA and go start this journey to become animators. And for about 3 years, he and I both went to the same unaccredited art schools all over LA, just many 3-hour classes, figurative drawing, learning animation, everything. And we both landed our jobs around the same time. At the same time I landed the position at the first season of Futurama, I also got accepted into CalArts. So I was like, what do I do? One or the other. And I chose Futurama because the same people that were getting into Futurama were being scouted and pulled from the graduating class at CalArts. So I was like, oh, they maybe had the same education. Hindsight, I honestly should have chose to go to school instead, because I think I would have been a more well-versed artist in terms of like a visual artist. But, I was pumped. I got the job at Futurama. And then after the first season, I moved on to The Simpsons. After about 2.5 seasons there, I just found myself not doing as much as I wanted there. That's pretty awesome, right? I'm at The Simpsons. I'm getting an Emmy. Ron's upstairs, just one floor above me. We're freaking roommates. We started this journey together. We're joking about how every year we're switching. His show's getting the Emmy. We're getting the Emmy. We're going back and forth. And it's like, that's kind of the dream. But I wasn't progressing, and I saw in my work, I wasn't doing as well as I wanted to in the world of animation. And, it showed in my work. I just didn't do as well as I did in the beginning because I had so much more passion. But I guess I didn't have as much passion for drawing as I thought, and it showed in my work. So, I was like, you know what, let me go study something else. And had I gone to CalArts and gotten the well-rounded animation, curriculum, I would have had learned like storyboarding and background, design and pre-production and story, just writing, just everything. But I made my own curriculum just to be an animator. So I was stuck, and I was like, well, that's all I know, and I can't do anything else. So I was like, let me go back to school. Found a school in Boston to go study graphic design, advertising, and photography. Moved out there with barely any family out there. She's not even family, but she treated me like family, so it was awesome. 3 times removed cousins, families, moms, something other, but they were the best. So moved to Boston, studied all that stuff, really fell in love with advertising and photography, and moved back to San Diego, proposed to my high school sweetheart, and have been back since, and worked my way up from, working at a newspaper, as you know, Aaron, because you're a graphic designer as well, just all the pre-press stuff, like it was just purely pre-press, just getting everybody's ads and prepping them for press, for web press, and then daily deadlines for print. For newspaper was rough, but man, did you learn how to do the short keys quick. And then
we're talking about late 90s, maybe?
No, this is 2004.
Oh, 2004. Okay.
Yeah. Burning plates from to print on a web press. Then I got into an agency around the corner called At Ease, which became Civilian. And this agency is still part of my life, actually. Their focus wasn't a typical agency focus where it's like, retail agency where it's like, we could show the bottom line to the client, like you got more car sales. The agency focuses on social change. Like, these days we talk about mental health, right? About 12 years ago, not really. Mm-hmm. Just as far back, that's not even that far back, but we were part of that early conversation. So this agency spoke about things like that, like social change and suicide prevention and bringing drinking and alcohol and drug use down for teens. So that was kind of a cool place to be, creating work to make an actual change. So I was there for a few years, and then I decided I got kind of like, let me try something else. So I went to Jack in the Box for about 2.5 years. That was wild. I got to help out the team that came up with the Munchie Meal. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It was basically for high drunk people, and it was just a wild time. Worked on that, and then Civilian became Civilian from At Ease, And so, that pulled me back in. I was there for about the last 5.5 years, worked my way up to associate creative director, which was a great time. Got to make some really impactful work. And one of my biggest campaigns actually helped out the community that I grew up in. So that was awesome. So it was 9 to 10 months of just listening to the community and building that campaign from their experience, because I'm not them and they can't do marketing. So let me learn what you know so I could speak on your behalf, and created work to bring awareness to some really tough stuff that, the community I grew up in was going through. So that was cool. And in that process, as in advertising, you start to do more and more video production, and kind of fell in love with that part of advertising and, design and all that. It's just kind of, after you write the spot, it's like producing and, setting up the commercial. So, ended up swinging over to this company called Pure Cinema, where I'm at now, and on the side I do my own thing too. But yeah, I'm kind of like you guys. I'm always walking around with a microphone and a camera, at least with me and my crew. Mm-hmm. And we're traveling around Southern California, sometimes across the U.S. Next week, I'm going to be going all through not next week, in about 2 weeks, I'll be going through all Central California, doing some documentary stuff on agriculture. I'm in the middle of a documentary right now for this this organization called Border Angels. So some really deep stuff too, as much as we're having fun on commercial stuff. But if I can stay with that feeling of work that I have with, the social change stuff, I would like to, in terms of for professional work. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so anyways, you asked how I got into writing comics. And so what happened was, as I mentioned earlier, like some of those campaigns take 9 to 10 months of research, and you'd boil it down to a 30-second commercial. But there's so much research, and you have to for your clients, as you know, Aaron, right? For your clients to speak to speak for them, you have to be kind of an expert. And we get paid to be experts for a while, but we get paid to learn to be that same expert. So lots of research to come up with a concept to then drive like a specific story and or call to action from your client. For the prospective, customers for your client or audience. And I was always like, I love writing spots, but they're only 30 seconds. And there's so much amazing research that goes into everything we do for advertising. Like, I wonder what if I could use that knowledge and use it towards long form. And somewhere in that time, I met Justin, my editor for this. Buddy first. He was a friend first. Met him at Yesteryear Comics. He is a writer and an editor and a critic in his own right. He's been doing that for going on, I think, 15 years. And we met at a comic shop, and he would do stuff with Brian Wood. He knows a lot of people in the industry. And we just have lunch and dinner once in a while. And, I would jokingly say, what if we did something like this? And he's like, well, why don't you just do it? And so finally I was like, yeah, let me put something together. So he was an awesome support and friend to help me kind of get through the process of how to write and take that long form and make this story that we're going to be talking about in a bit. So, yeah.
You mentioned ethnicity earlier, and you also mentioned the community that you grew up in. You want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm Filipino, and so I grew up in Paradise Hills, where I would say it's predominantly people of color. So it's funny because one of my friends I went to high school with, she was at UCSD one time and said that her sorority sisters went to, quote, the bad area, and it was kind of scary. And she's like, what area? She's like, oh, this place. And she's like, that's where I grew up, and that's where I live. It's not, quote, scary. It's not bad. And that's something that I like to, try to correct in people too. It's like when people say a bad area, it puts the onus on the people, when what it is we didn't have enough resources where we grew up. So all we had to do was goof off and do dumb things. And I'm not saying that's right either, but also, nothing to keep us from doing weird things is you're bored. And also, if you're looking for somebody to do something bad, you're going to think they're doing something bad. So I went on a tangent there, but yeah.
We're all about tangents on this podcast. Yeah, I guess, according to, I guess we'll start getting into the comic book.
Yeah.
According to a 2019 post on Forbes, if California were to become its own country, it would be the 5th largest economy. Your comic book, California Inc., envisions California not only as its own country, but as its own company.
Yeah.
Can you please walk us through how you decided on this premise for your comic book?
That's funny. You mentioned that exact thing. That was part of something that Justin and I talked about, which I believe he said it was a RAND report, and that might have been from that Forbes article too. Yeah, we would have, at that time, would have been the 5th strongest economy in the world, not just in the nation, in the world. And I think currently we're the 4th.
Wow.
So we were just kind of talking about that. At the time, what the genesis of this was kind of, like I said, I'm from San Diego. I moved to LA. I've actually driven from LA to Florida, and people in the middle think we're weird. And we are, whatever. I lived in the East Coast. They think we're strange. And people have heard me say this before, like, they think Californians all surf. They think we're all vegan. They think we all do yoga, partly true, like, but the joke for me was, so this book for me is serious satire. So the idea is, well, what if we're right? My joke was to myself, well, what if we're right? What if we separated from the rest of the U.S. and we did our own thing? What would that look like? And then also, why would it be any different from anywhere else? And, we're so politically correct. That's kind of a very corporate thing to be, is very politically correct. So again, the joke is, well, what if we weren't just a nation, but a corporate nation? And taking all that silly jargon that we've all dealt with in corporate America, just like circle back and, like, let's put a pin in it. Just that world of corporate kind of silly jargon. Like, I thought of, well, what if we had that as our kind of driver for being a nation? And so kind of wrote it from there, but thought about, then that's the backdrop. Well, what about the people that live here? Well, we're not just employees. I'm sorry, we're not just residents. We're actually employees. Well, what about the people who've been here before the U.S., like our Native American friends who live out here? First they get their land taken, and now they're being turned into corporate employees. So, like, there's that storyline that's being brought up in issue 2, and just kind of the world of issue 1. You'll kind of see more about that.
Mm-hmm. And how long were you thinking about, this idea in your head, and how long did it take to finish issue 1?
Oh, man. Justin and I brought up, I think I would say 2014, 15, started writing it in 2016, didn't finish writing all 4 issues, with him editing, by the way. Justin had, just out of his own kindness, just editing for free, just because it was a fun reason for us to meet up, is him to critique the work, give me some reasons to make it better. Took about 3.5, 4 years, honestly, which is very slow for compared to how they do things. It's monthly, right? Is how they write out here for bigger labels. But I was a working dad of 3, and that was the only time I could write it. So,
well, props to you for doing all 4 already.
Yeah. It's technically, Justin has officially approved all 4. So at this current time, we're waiting for Dave, and I'm not throwing him under the bus. It takes time to make work. So he's working on the art for issue 2. Then we're going to go straight to issue 3 for sure.
Nice. Was there a specific moment in time that gave you the push? I mean, you sort of touched on it earlier, but that gave you that push to finally just say, I'm doing this. Like,
Yeah. And react to this too, Aaron, because you're a graphic designer, right? And all we do is work for everybody else, and we loved it. Mm-hmm. I love it. I still love it. I still love working for clients because it gives me a reason to make something, and I want to speak on their behalf, and I want to celebrate them, right? But I've never made anything purely for me. Mm-hmm. Think about it. Even at The Simpsons and Futurama, that was for somebody else. Right. That wasn't for me. Mm-hmm. And so it was just kind of this, like, we're artists and we want to make stuff all the time. And I'm like, you know what? When have I ever made anything for me and not had somebody go, oh, well, you should do this to it? Well, yeah, that's Justin's job. But that was kind of the thing. I was like, I don't think, I stopped painting. I stopped drawing for myself. And so I really do love writing. So I was like, let me put that to you, see if I could write a comic, because there's so many things that are inspiring me. Like specifically at the time, I'll tell you, it was Greg Rucka's Lazarus.
I like that comic book.
Yeah, Justin knows. He's probably laughing listening to this. I'm a huge Greg Rucka fan. Rick Remender's Deadly Class is a huge influence. Matt Hawkins' Think Tank was a huge influence on me too. And then when Scott Snyder, I know people make fun of the New 52, but then Scott Snyder's Court of Owls, it just made me go, wow, like you could do some really powerful stuff with just writing. Just everything we take in is from writing. That's what the whole writer strike's about, right? So, you know, I felt like I had a voice I haven't expressed in writing. So I was like, let me explore this. As you know, I've illustrated, I painted, I do photography, I write commercials, I produce, you know, ads and graphic design. I'm like, let me explore writing. And I found out I really do love writing. Like, I could write for a couple hours and it won't feel like work. Where drawing after some time, I'm like, ugh. And I look at my clock, it's only been 30 minutes. Like,
You know, I totally feel you, because I was working in a small little boutique agency prior to the pandemic. And I started doing a lot of the blog posts, you know, just writing them. Yeah. And I found that I enjoyed them quite a bit.
Yeah.
So, and I've always been, you know, in high school, I ended up becoming the photography editor. Yeah. But I was also writing at the same time. I was doing editorials. I was doing feature stories, sports, you know. So I remember, like, I was, like, enjoying that process. And, you know, fast forward to now, it's like, yeah, I think, you know, I'm seeing a lot of what you're doing in my future, because eventually I want to do my own comic book as well. And
Sweet.
I see myself as a writer of a comic book. Yeah. So, you know, I'm watching you with, you know, I'm pulling for you, because, you know.
You know, it's funny. I'm not kidding. On the way in, I was like, I think Aaron and I are kind of kindred in that I could see that you also see this whole thing right here, this whole setup. Like I could tell you're having fun putting it together. You know what I mean? Just setting up the mics. And something about, and that's why I like being a producer as well, something about not just making it, but then also making sure it happens. I don't know, do you feel it? Because I love the feeling when it's done that I had a hand in making sure it happened so everybody was happy, and it comes out just kind of like being the creative is one thing, but also like making sure it happens. I don't know. I've seen you do this for years. Hey, by the way, I need to ask you two questions, if you don't mind. I need to ask both of these questions. Right. We've known each other in passing for about a good so many years. Yeah. I think I've done shook Aaron's hand a few times at a con, and I might have said hi to Alex a few times at a con, but I think we only know each other through a couple friends of ours, like Joel and
Joel.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you don't mind me asking you two, like, how did I know Hall H? Like, that's what's great. As a designer, good for you. Great brand. I know it. You know what I mean?
Oh, you want to hear about our origin story?
I would love that. I would genuinely, dude, because Joel and I kind of have, I think, a similar relationship to you two. You see me and him at cons together all the time, and I say you two like somewhat kind of like me and Joel. We're joined in hit, but we're not. You know what I mean? So,
well, we've known each other since we went to San Diego State back in the early 90s, and you know, I remember, you know, we would hang out, and every once in a while we would, you know, we should do something together or whatever. So it's like, you know, fast forward a few years, I end up going to Orange County to do my corporate gig, and I come back after 10 years, and then I'm looking for something to do, you know, something creative, and we meet up with a mutual friend, Ed Santos, at a tea shop on Convoy. Convoy is the Asian part of town here in San Diego. And we're just, you know, talking, you know, about a bunch of random things. I think one of the things we were talking about was the recent Transformers movie. Like, we thought it was ridiculous that Optimus Prime was riding on Grimlock or something like that. You know, something crazy like that.
Damn you, Michael Bay.
Yeah. So anyways, and then all of a sudden Alex blurts out, "Hey, you know what? I have hallh.com." Like the domain name.
Domain name, yeah. I had it for
squatter. Amazing. I love it.
3-4 years. I have it.
Yeah.
Just sitting on it.
Yeah. So he
just randomly, that's amazing.
He just casually blurts it out, and then we're just like stunned, you know. And it's like,
Comic-Con was a month and a half or so away.
Yeah. Comic-Con was maybe 2 months away or something like that. So Comic-Con's in July. we meet up at this tea shop in May or something like that. And he said, and then I say, we gotta do something with that, you know. So it's like, you know, I'm a graphic designer, but I don't do a lot of web stuff, right? So I kind of just picked up the ball and decided to learn the basics of WordPress. Just put a quick site together. So we put a quick site together. We all started doing research on artists that we want to follow. And in the very beginning, we didn't really know what our voice would be, but we kind of knew that we don't want to do mainstream, you know, topics. We want to cover stuff that we were into, which is like Artist Alley, small press type of stuff.
Right on.
Which is what we do to this day. So we'll leave like all the mainstream news to the bigger outlets, because we always felt that, you know, a lot of artists in Artist Alley, a lot of creators deserve more attention. It's like, I remember one year, I tell this a lot when I'm being interviewed, but I remember Ron Lim. You know, yeah. He was sitting there by himself one year and nobody was talking to him, and I felt really bad. So I always have that image in my head where, you know, I want to give as much attention to Artist Alley as possible. So that's what we did. We started doing research on a bunch of artists online. I think one of the artists that I first started following was Orlando Arocena. He goes by Mexafunk. He's like, oh, you got to follow him, because he's like, I just interviewed him at San Diego Comic-Con, but we did interview him back in 2016.
Right on.
He's what I think he's the most like prolific and most talented vector artist in the world. Like what he can do in like 20 hours, people usually do in 20 days or something like that. You know, He's that good, and he's fucking talented and you know, just sharp and just funny, and he's a really cool guy too.
Right on.
Really down to earth. And so, you know, we got to know him, and he's part of this group called Poster Posse. So, like, they were one of our first like sort of contacts into the pop culture world when it comes to like art and what's out there. So, I remember one of the first things that we shared was Orlando's. They do a lot of these tribute projects, and so they had done a tribute project for
Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, Planet of the Apes. So it was a really intricate vector, you know, poster, and so yeah, we started following them. Then we started following all those other people, and then like you mentioned Bobby Rubio earlier. Mm-hmm. He was actually our first interview for the blog before the podcast.
Yeah.
So
like typed out interview, like transcribed everything.
Amazing.
Yeah. So like, and it's kind of funny the way the podcast sort of evolved was we were sort of recording our interviews anyway, so that I could transcribe them and write them out later. And then I was listening to a lot of podcasts, because when I moved back down to San Diego, I was working for that boutique agency. It was up in the La Jolla UTC area, and I was living up there at the time, and I could walk to work. So, you know, I was like able to listen. That's when I started listening to podcasts and stuff. And then that's when I said, you know, why don't we just do a podcast for ourselves? It's easier than just writing all the time, you know?
Transcribing is no joke.
Yeah. So, so we decided to try the podcast, give it a shot. And one of our first guest for the podcast, his name is Tony Kim. He does Hero Within. He's a former designer as well, but he started getting into pop culture apparel, like sophisticated sort of like geek wear. So he ended up getting a contract with DC and then Marvel. Now he has a contract with Star Trek, I guess Paramount maybe. So wow. He's come up a lot in the last few years since 2016. So we sort of pride ourselves on being a voice for pop culture creators, for independent pop culture creators.
Cool.
Where you know, you can be a comic book artist or a creator, a writer like yourself. We've interviewed tattoo artists, filmmakers, breakdancers. Yeah. So anything that pretty much catches our attention and that we're interested in, that's who we want to have on the podcast.
That's cool. Spotlighting people who don't. I mean, yeah, that's great. You're right, because the bigger names already have plenty of light. So. And people will come up over time if you give them the light, you know?
Yeah. So, you know, people are surprised like when they say, oh, you got your the Hall H show? Like, you know, you must get into the Hall H all the time. I said, no. I haven't been to Hall H since, you remember the movie Abraham Lincoln, the Vampire Hunter?
No.
That's the last time I was in Hall H for their panel. I think it might have been, I want to say 2000. That's definitely before Twilight. I think.
Yeah, but those lines,
Yeah.
I can't spend a whole, you're losing a whole day.
Exactly. I couldn't do it either.
Yeah, that's just, ugh.
And then there's so many awesome small panels out there that, like, again, deserve a lot of attention as well. In addition to, attending, checking out Artist Alley and Small Press. And we've gotten to know a lot of, like, incredible comic book creators. There's an awesome, comic book community up in LA.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to mention this earlier, but you have Connor Hughes doing some very, covers for you. For people who are White Ash readers, that's, he's an artist for that book, with Charlie Stickney being the writer.
Mm-hmm.
So Charlie Stickney up there in L.A. with Ryland Grant, David Pepose, Stephen Prince, Carla Nappi. Those they're all good people up there.
It's funny you mentioned Charlie. I'd say he's the linchpin for me to go from. So Justin and I wrote this. Excuse me. We put this together with the intent, and because Justin's not familiar with the Kickstarter route, he's not used to the crowdfunding route, and so he's been published by Dark Horse and a couple other places, and so he knows that route, and so. The plan was, let's get all 4 issues written so we don't have to worry about an outline. If we do get picked up, it's done. But then let's get the first 4 pages illustrated, show that we have a full creative team in line, and we have all the character designs, and we're going to pitch. And at the same time, he's like, and just to set your expectations, you might pitch, and if one out of like so many might even say maybe. And if it's somewhat of a yes, it'll be another 2 years before it because there's just so much in the queue for what's getting made. And I went to...
You call that development hell, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, it might get greenlit, sort of, but even then, it's still not sure. And mentioning small panels, like you said, one of my favorite conventions here in Southern California is Comic-Con Revolution out in Ontario. And great panels. Like last year, they had the whole Avatar cast there. Ridiculous. They blew up. And this year, apparently, they're going to get Ashley Eckstein and the 2 other voices. I completely forget the name. Matt, who's the voice of Anakin, and then I want to say Ewan McGregor's voice, but it's not.
Right.
Yeah. So, anyways, I went to a panel there about self-publishing, just to kind of wrap my head around it. And I remembered I met with Charlie. I met him at LACC a few months before, and just the plan was meet some publishers and see if they could consider your book to be, greenlit. So I pitched him my story, and he's like, "Yeah, let me get back to you." And I ran into him again at Comic-Con Revolution, and we were talking, and then I was like, "So," and basically he said, "I don't want you to go through where I'm at," and I thought, "Oh shit," he just gave me a no, and he goes, "No, let me explain to you. I think you have something really good that you should do what I'm doing." He's like, "I'm going through a Kickstarter. You get to keep your stuff. No one else owns any of it. You keep all the IP. You make your own audience." And you could tell Charlie, he's built his audience. Yep. He's definitely someone that I, go to for guidance. And so he's got a massive audience that he has cultivated on his own through his own brand. And so that's kind of the route that I want to go, is build that through here. And it's funny because now, as you can see, I do have my own title or label, Studio 12-7. And after we're done with this, Justin, he has a written 5-page mini-series that we're going to then produce after this one. So he says that can go under your label if you want. He's just help me make it. So yeah, it's just the whole self-publishing thing didn't become a thing until maybe just a year and a half ago. And so maybe even just a year, because Dave and I met 2 LACCs ago. So yeah, it was not the original plan, and I'm super excited. And he and I split the IP on this with Justin just a little bit. So if anything happens, which, most likely not, but it's cool to know that we own it and we don't have to give a piece to anybody else. It's a little more work, but also, man, is it satisfying. And Justin has been stung by the industry quite a few times, and he's been having a lot of fun, even as somebody on the side, but also he's definitely got a pretty prominent name on the book. He's been having a lot of fun promoting the heck out of it. And I could tell, I even asked him, he's like, "Yeah, I think I'm having fun in comics again. I'm having fun with being," because I know, it didn't treat a lot of people well. The industry doesn't treat people very well, unless you're like one of the big ones. one of the bigger names, and it's hard if you can't get in, so, but becoming a big name within the world, the small world of, small/big world of Kickstarter is kind of cool. Like it's fun. It's fun for sure.
Yeah, he's definitely a source for self-publishing and Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And I've been to a lot of his panels, and I've met him a few times as well. And it's like he's definitely an awesome resource, and he's a good person too. He's really cool.
He does not. He's not shy about giving any knowledge. He shares everything. There's nothing. Some people like hide and like it's not a secret. Just give it up.
Yeah.
It's like there's plenty of room for everybody's stuff. Be cool. There's room for everybody.
That's one thing I like about the people that I mentioned, especially Rylan. He has a mentality where it's like he's the type of person that he'll want to open the door and get as many people that he knows into that door as possible. So just and all that, and a lot of people that have attended his panels in the past, they become creators themselves.
Right on.
So it's pretty cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, what about you, if you mind me asking? Well, let me ask Alex. You mentioned you want to write something. Do you have a couple of?
I've written just ideas here and there. I have a lot on my phone of different ideas that I've kept track of, but I haven't really pursued like a script or. Is
there one that if the one that keeps coming back to you is like the one that you should go, or is there one that keeps like tapping on your head like, hey dude, don't forget about me? Yeah,
there is, but I guess inside my head I'm thinking it might be too grand of a first one to try.
But just go for it.
No, because I just want. I guess for me it's like usually when I try something, I just want to get the process there.
I get you. Yeah.
And then expound and get better at it on the next iteration or next project. But I don't know. It's like I definitely have ideas for sure. And I will go for it. For sure.
Actually, I think you're right. That's fair because California Ink is one of the few that I had, and there's one real personal one that I want to work on. But you're right. I told myself, let me knock this one out of the way so I don't. So all the mess ups I have here, which I'm not going to see, right? Like any artist, you don't see. You always look back and go, oh, I could have done that better, even though it was great at the time for the level you're at. Mm-hmm. And I want to save for myself, like when I feel much more comfortable, like I said, with the process and finding my voice for this one story that I'm working on. Mm-hmm. I'm still taking notes. I'm not writing it yet. I think, like you said, that's fair. That's fair. I like what you're saying.
I think at the very least, maybe I'll do an anthology first.
Okay.
Just to do something.
Yeah.
But I just want to do a quick shout out. I mentioned the LA, comic book creators. We do have a awesome group here in San Diego. The Accidental Aliens, Scott Lost, and everybody over there. Good friend of the show, Keith and Jones. So
there's a few creators here in San Diego that I've seen through Kickstarter. I think Pat Shand is one, and I think Mark Ostack, I think, from San Diego as well. So we haven't, obviously, because we have Comic-Con, right? There's got to be a decent amount of us down here.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll run into a bunch of them at the next San Diego Comic Fest whenever they get a chance to come back. Let's see here. How did you find the creative team for your book?
Yeah, well, you've heard the story about how Justin and I met. Again, Charlie's going to make this story quite a bit. He just said, hey, go wander up and down Artist Alley and go find something and just make a connection. You know what I mean? And I did do that. I walked around Artist Alley a few times, different conventions. And Dave at LACC about 3 years ago was just hanging out, and his pop-up banner behind him, the work was just gorgeous for this really wild sci-fi thriller that he and Chris are working on called The Space Auditorium. And it just drew me in. I was like, wow, I come from a very traditional, it's called the Riley method, kind of a structured way of drawing the human figure. And so his was mind-bending for me. I know he knows his structure, but he's playing with it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I was like, wow, what is that? Let me go over there and talk to Z. I wasn't thinking about him as being an artist at the time. We were just chatting. And man, did we hit it off. It was like meeting a buddy. We're just goofing, just having a good time. And then, bought a book and left. And Joel kind of nudges me. He goes, you guys get along? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, and I was just kind of thinking about it. And Joel, he goes, I think you want to work with him, right? I was like, let me think about it. You know what I mean? And then like I just couldn't get his work, and you two know how that is. We have coworkers we don't get along with, and that's the hardest work to get through. You want to make work with people, and especially something like this, it's a passion project. You want it to be fun. And so I went back to chat him up again, and then I brought up like commissions, and he thought I meant like just a single image. And I was like, no, like, can I commission you to do my book? I'm like, I'm not going to, I know some Kickstarters, they fund for the payment of artists out of my own pocket, because I'm a nobody. Nobody knows me in this industry. So I was like, just because I wrote it for free on my free time, I'm going to meet an artist. I'm an artist myself. I don't want to be doing free work and hoping to get paid. So I was like, okay, I could barely afford the first one. Let me see if I could afford the first issue out of my own pocket. And so I asked him what his rate was, and he was able to work it down with me. But also at the same time, and we both agreed, I was like, can I send you the script? As much as we get along, if you don't like the story, it's going to show in the work, right? Mm-hmm. And so like I sent him the script to all 4 issues, and he read them, and he called me up or he emailed me, and he's like, dude, this is cool. Let's work on this. I was like, hey, cool. That's good. If you like it, then it'll show in the work. If you don't, it'll definitely show in the work. And so that's how he and I got together. The letterer, I reached out to a few guys through other connections. I'm not going to say who, but apparently they were giving me some random rates that were just sky high, because I'm a nobody, you know what I mean? At least in the industry, excuse me. And I'm not trying to be self-deprecating, but I haven't earned my stripes just yet. And a lot of my other friends are like, oh, those are fuck you rates, excuse the language. And they just don't know if I'm real, if I'm going to pay out of my pocket or not. So they're giving me FU rates. Like, if you're serious, here's my rate. Mm-hmm. The great news is, of all these years, just like you guys, I've been to so many conventions. I've met the right people. And Alex Chung and DJ Kirkbride recommended I reach out to Frank. And reach out to Frank through them. And so at least it's not that cold a call. And he gave me a very reasonable rate. And he likes working with indie books, which is cool. Again, I gave him the script, so read it, tell me if this is something you're into. And it worked out. It's worked out. And if you go to, I forget which page it is in issue 1, but there was a wild back and forth in a very intense moment. I remembered writing and thinking, how's this going to plan out? How's this going to pan out in layout? And then Dave laid out the pages, and I was like, how are these bubbles going to work? And Frank came back with the first rough draft of it, and I was like, wow, you figured that out. I was like, he got the right guy. So yeah, and we only know each other through email, but he is hilariously sarcastic. I'm like, I think we could be friends. So I'm glad we all get along, you know, and it just, even if it's through email, thank God for the internet. But that's how we got together for sure. Yeah.
I mentioned Rylan earlier. He's also a movie screenwriter.
Oh, sweet.
So when he writes his comic books, he envisions himself as the director.
Yeah.
You know. So how do you envision yourself, I mean, as the writer of the book? But I mean, do you allow room for collaboration, or
100%. From any project I work on, if you talk to anybody in my team in the world of graphic design and advertising, especially, you've met creative directors who are just complete a-holes, who think they are, God. I hate that. I'm a true believer in the work only gets better if you're willing to bounce it off somebody, especially in the beginning. I believe in, we all... Before the pandemic, we creative rooms would have like the big whiteboard where you could put many ideas up. And a rule that I really believed in, especially in the conceptualizing stages of creative, is don't say no to anything. Because even if it's a bad idea, if you don't put that bad idea up, that could be the seed to a better idea, the better idea is not going to show up, right? So I'm a true believer in let people have their voice, because you're not the only one in the room. Otherwise, I don't want to have what I call the human mouse. You've dealt with this as a designer, I'm sure. The hovering art directors behind you, they're like, move that over there, three clicks. I'm like, I'm not your human mouse. Don't make me do that. And so I would hate to think that I work that way, but I usually don't. My designers, when I was in advertising, I would always say, here's the art, here's the mood board, here's the art direction, and here's the concept that I'm going for. And as long as we're on strategy and we're hitting the messaging, do my version, but also you're creative. Do something better. give me something better than what I'm asking for. And when I met Dave, I wrote these what's called full script, which means I fully described all my panels, not too far out, but I described them, which I know a lot of illustrators don't like, you know. But because I didn't have an illustrator, and it's my first time writing a book, I want to make sure that it could happen in my head. So I wrote everything full script, and then I gave it to Dave and said, but have fun with it. Do your version of those panels. And he did some stuff where it wasn't in the order that I thought it would go in. But that's something, as we know in art, that can happen. Things happen like when you're shooting video too. We might have a shot list, but when you're on set, you might catch the light a certain way, or the room wasn't what we thought it was when we were storyboarding it out. And maybe if we did the camera move this way, let's get it in the can, because in editing, it might work better than what we thought. So leave room for yourself or somebody in the room to say, hey, what about this? I don't care if it's, hierarchy, if it's the intern. If they have an idea that makes it better, the work needs to be better, make it better. Who cares?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love that approach. I know you have an active Kickstarter campaign going on right now for issue number 2, but could you please give our audience a recap of issue number 1?
Without spoiling it?
Without spoiling it, exactly.
Issue 1 kind of sets the tone, and if you watch the teaser video, it's setting up this world of, it's a corporate nation, and we've all seen it. We've all been, I don't know if you've worked in corporate. I think we've all worked in corporate in some way or form. And there's always a CEO who thinks they're the brand, until a few years later when that CEO doesn't make the board happy and they're out and there's a new CEO. And my point is, no one's bigger than the brand. And if you read issue 1, you learn quickly, before issue 2, that you're not bigger than the brand, no matter who you think you are on this. So, but as much as we talk about the corporate side of it, what makes California in this story independent, which we can't do now, is we don't have our own fresh water source. That's what we could do. What would help us, and so the border now for Tahoe splits between our two states. And so in this story, that's the border is now shifted, so it's all in California. Hence, you should infer that there was a battleground and a fight for that border, and that's where that takes place. So as much as you might hear from this podcast, you think it's just, this whole story is just about people talking in a boardroom. It's not. There's a lot of military action that happens because of geopolitics behind it also. A lot of setup of the geopolitics, some of the internal politics, and just world build to help you understand where you're being placed in this story, and also kind of set your expectations right up front.
Are there any characters that you want to highlight?
For the second issue?
Well, I guess for issue 1.
Issue
first.
1. Oh, issue 1. Vessel was an awesome one for me to put together. She embodies a lot of, like, when we come out of, when we're going into college and we have, rose-colored glasses on and we think we're going to change the world and we think we can make that strong of an impact. And I'm not saying we shouldn't keep those on, but reality hits us and knocks those glasses off when we when we become part of this giant machine. And it kind of reflects on that for her. But, the Marcus and Richard characters, who are the two kind of entities that brought together the idea and then got California to separate. They're the kind of the brain trust that made up the California Inc. There's some personal stories behind there for myself, corporate backstabbing, things like that.
Gotcha.
Relationships changing from one dynamic to another quickly in office politics. So, yeah.
You mentioned, I guess we'll move a little bit into issue 2. You mentioned that there'll be some new characters, some diverse characters.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Issue 2, for me at least, and Justin can agree to this when he was helping me edit the voices, we meet a few new characters. One of them, of course, for me is important because representation does matter. We meet Robin Flores. Surprise, she's Filipina with that last name. So we meet her, and we don't quite understand where she kind of lands in where this all is, but she's a major player. But my two favorite characters are the Native American brother and sister duo, Big Sis and LB. We get to learn about them here and what they might have planned for the corporate nation. As I mentioned earlier, Native Americans, they didn't have a choice. They got colonized. And then in this story, they're getting corporately colonized. So they're here, but maybe they don't want to be part of the corporate country. So what's their action plan for, this new nation? Mm-hmm. And so we get to hear a little bit about that too. Yeah.
And you said there'd be 4 issues total?
Yeah, 4 total. And 4-issue miniseries, correct.
Was it always the goal to do 4 issues, or?
Yeah, I originally thought I was going to do 6. Originally, until I started writing it, and even Justin was like, I think I remember the original plan. you want me to hold?
No, that's fine.
The original plan for this was I had an outline for 6 issues, and we thought we were going to pitch and hopefully get picked up. And Justin was like, just from his experience, like, it's got to be a 4-issue miniseries. Most of these labels won't do anything over 4, especially as an unknown quantity. If you could prove yourself in 4, then maybe you could do 6. That's 6 months versus 4 months. And as we know from traditional comics, if issue 1 doesn't do well, they might print issue 2. Even if you might have all 4 planned, it might not make it to 3.
Right.
So I have 4. I'm seeing how much work it is, and I'm glad it's just 4 for now until my next series comes up.
Is there any part of the Kickstarter that you want to highlight?
Yeah. The word's just getting out on issue 2. So there's going to be a lot of people who've never had issue 1. For me, that's important because I don't want you to go, oh, well, issue 2's out. Wouldn't make sense to me. I'm not trying to pull an Ahsoka on you people who haven't seen Rebels. This is there's a lot of people very confused if you haven't seen Rebels.
Right.
But there's catch-up options. So if you just hearing about this now and you're interested, you can get both 1 and 2. And if you're a digital reader, you can get it digitally. If you want the physical, you can get them both physically too. So there's that.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't know if you've listened to our past podcast, but we do have something called the Thunder Round, which is our round of random questions, and I'll turn it over to Alex.
All right. Let's see. First question. Music has a huge impact on us. Did you listen to any particular kind of music to get to the right mindset to write California?
Oh, man. Okay, so ask my wife about this. I have a very short attention span. If I'm writing just a text and if somebody's talking around me, I can't finish the text. I can't have any noise. Although if I'm in production mode, like graphic design, if I'm not writing, if I'm making a logo, if I'm making anything that doesn't require me to write, even an email. If I'm writing an email, I got to shut everything off. I got to get everybody to be extremely quiet. So when I shared an office, I had to have noise-canceling headphones. But if I'm listening to music, I think I'm one of only 2 people in the world who pay for Pandora Radio. No one else pays for it, but I actually pay for it. I have a Childish Gambino station. That's my go-to station. It runs a lot of Logic and J. Cole and, obviously Childish Gambino. And that is kind of my go-to. I love, the Far Side. And then I'll switch it over to my, like Nirvana and then Sublime, like all that, just everything in that. Well, they're not really exact same genres, but, Pearl Jam, those are my things. But definitely my go-to is my Childish Gambino station for sure. But in terms of writing, nothing.
It's quiet.
Maybe conceptualizing, it would be, I'd say, Childish Gambino station. So anything that would fall underneath that, for sure.
Cool. All right. Let's see. If you could have a meal with anyone from history, who would it be with, and where would you take that person?
Oh, man. I do know the answer to this. If I can give you 2 people because they're completely different, and where would I take them? Can I give you 2 people?
Sure.
Okay. I just mentioned.
Would you both of them together?
Yeah, because
Okay.
if I can get the 3 of us to chill and I could pick both their brains. Okay, these are 2 of my creative heroes, Donald Glover and Conan O'Brien. They don't seem similar, but they are, because they didn't give an F and made anything that they thought that they loved, that they thought people would love. they're artists in that they would make things for them that they liked themselves and thought people might like. They're not trying to make stuff to make sales. And I always found that like freaking inspiring and amazing because they're successful at making stuff for them that they think people would love. And switch every time. Like Conan went from TV show to podcast to going on the road. Donald Glover went from YouTube to writing for 30 Rock to Community to now being a musical artist. Then Atlanta, which is amazing. It's just
Star Wars. I mean,
yeah. I know he and his brother are writing this.
Oh, for Lando.
Yeah. If they're ever going to get to write because of the strike.
Right.
But where would I take them? Oh, man, my mind went straight to Thai. I don't know why. I'll just say Thai food.
You have a good favorite Thai food here?
Okay, so does Sips count? That's a vegan place. That's very Californian.
I like Sips.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it too. Yeah.
The one, I think I went to the one in Claremont Mesa.
Right by Kamikaze.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, love that spot.
It's vegan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very sorry, we're very Californian.
Yeah.
Next to the yoga place, right?
Yeah.
Okay, next question. California's economy is at least 3 trillion with a T.
Dang.
Trillion. What would you do with that amount of money?
Oh man, what would I do? You know what? As I mentioned, I would make sure for me that neighborhoods that don't have access to things that I didn't grow up with. Because I'm in a neighborhood now that does.
Yeah.
By that I mean parks, libraries. What's that?
Parks with functional playgrounds.
Yeah. Playgrounds that don't hurt you. Libraries. There's so many hiking trails and running trails where I'm at, and just rec rooms, just things that my kids are growing up with that I wish I had. That it's amazing what my kids are growing up with that I'm trying to maximize. Mm-hmm. And I wish that I grew up with that. And there's still, unfortunately, a lot of neighborhoods that don't have that. And if we can make sure everybody has the same kind of access, that'd be, because they're the future. Kids are the future, right? And that would only benefit everybody. Like, I don't see why that's an issue.
Yeah, good answer. Let's see, next one. All right. Why is The Impending Blindness of Billy Scott by Zoe Thorogood one of your favorite books?
Oh my gosh, dude. Have you two read it yet?
Not yet.
Okay, I was going to try to pick up a copy and bring it here, but I couldn't find a place that had it. I'm not even joking. I was going to do that. In terms of layout, page turn. That's what I love about physical books. As much as there are a lot of digital readers out there, but there's something about the act of turning a page and there's a reveal, and also there's a spread in front of you, where if you're reading it digitally, you only get one page and there's no turn page, and then if there's a spread, it may not have been given to you as a spread. Mm-hmm. And so she really maximizes that in her layout, which is just amazing in terms of storytelling. But also there's such a raw, I wouldn't say, again, just like I mentioned with Conan and Donald Glover, I feel like she made this for her because she has something expressed within herself about her journey as an artist. It might be a little bit different, but there's something about that pain of making something, and that's what it's about. The pain of us as artists trying to make something as much as it is for ourselves, and we don't want praise. We kind of do, but we don't. We're this weird introvert / extrovert, and we're constantly fighting it. Am I making this for me? Making it for them? And it talks about that a lot, but I don't say existential because it's not an existential crisis that Billy Scott's going through, but there's something about, without spoiling it, that character is going through to ensure that the art that she's making is being made with the full intention, but also these pages where she's taking notes on people, but it's used as a layout is just, dude, as a designer, Aaron, you'd love it. You'd lose your mind. You're like, what the, I've never thought of I don't know, maybe, I don't know, I'm just naive, but then I love when people have fun and make you go, oh, I could do that with this. When people change, remember Twitter was originally supposed to be used as microblogging, but now it's used for communication.
Right.
Not just communication, it's like world text or whatever. So when somebody changes the way something was meant to be used and make you rethink it, I'm just like, I want to stand up and applaud that person. Like, good for you. And I loved, It's Lonely the Center of the Earth, her book that she's getting massive praise for now, which is wild. But I'm not saying that one's bad, because it's really good. But the Impending Blindness of Billy Scott came before. There's so much heart. And I'm not saying that the other one doesn't. Something about that first one just really got me. I was like, whew. Yeah.
Cool.
Give me tears.
Oh, wow.
Gotta check it out.
Yeah.
All right. Next one. What does stay in drugs, don't do school mean to you?
That's Rick Remender. He doesn't know me as a person. Okay. You know, I'm going to admit it here. Okay. Our boy Joel, you guys know him, right? He, for years, got into Comic-Con under Fox as a photographer, and he had full press access to everything, which is great. I mean, he did the job, did it right. He did them right. He took so many photos for them. And one time he goes, Art, as press, I have access to Rick Remender, and he knows how much I love his work. I was like, what do you mean we have access to him? I was like, we can interview him. I was like, get out of here. I was like, cool. And he's like, then don't worry, we'll get him in a room. And there's always like 8 different, teams interviewing, and it should be quick, maybe 10 minutes or whatever, no big deal. And it comes, and that was his last Comic-Con since this last one, when Deadly Class was blowing up, And so Joel tells me, hey, meet me at that room. I'm going to be like 10 minutes late. But, just tell Rick we'll be there. I'll be there in a few. I get in this massive room. I'm looking around. I'm like, it's just me. And in comes Rick Remender with his handler. And I'm like, it's just me and Rick Remender in this massive room. And I'm like sweating bullets because you two have been doing this way longer than me. And I'm just BSing my way in because I want to interview. So going back, Joel and I have Convention Life. So we're trying to interview him for Convention Life. And then anyways, he's one of my heroes. And so what that means to me is I started doing this thing where I get a book from a writer, and I have asked them to give me some form of creative advice. And so like Brian would put better than yesterday. That's awesome. It kind of makes sense, but it kind of doesn't. Like, keep going, And Zoe Thorogood has a joke because I told her, write something for me like, don't suck. And she did put don't suck, which is great. But right before I asked Rick Remender to give me that little note, we happened to make a joke about doing drugs. And he's like, do you do drugs? And I'm like, no. Because then we made jokes about drugs. And then I said, can you write something to inspire me as a writer? And he wrote that, stay in drugs, don't do school. And I was like, that's perfect. He's a funny guy, super sharp, and is just quick and easy. I'm like, it's perfect. Yeah. Like, that's one of my favorite ones I've gotten so far.
Cool story. All right, next question. If you could travel to any place and point in time, where would you go? But keep in mind, it's a one-way trip.
Oh, snap. That's a tough one. I can go personal and end up crying, and I'm not going to do that. So I will say... Oh, man. Okay. Here we go. I would go back to the guy who took the job at Futurama and say, go to school.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Oh, never heard that one before.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
All right. If you were a character on either Futurama or The Simpsons, what kind of character would you be?
Do you want to hear a story? I am a character in The Simpsons.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so one of the things that the writers hate is when we would sneak ourselves into scenes, because somehow they would know during, like just a quick review, the dailies or whatever, they would watch the animatics and go, that does not look like a background character. It looks too specific. That must be one of the animators or one of you directors. Cut that person. I had this great director named Lance. He's never going to hear this, but I loved him as a director. Super nice guy. He did not care if I drew myself into any background scenes. And I drew myself in one episode. I remember the episode number, BABF 09, Saddle Sword Galactica. It takes place at a fair, and I appear 2 times. One time as a child on a dad's shoulders, Another time I'm right next to Homer and he's yelling at BTO and he's like, play working overtime. And I'm next to him and I react. So who would I be? I'd be me in The Simpsons. Yeah.
Nice. All right, last question. It's 2 a.m. on a Saturday night, and the karaoke joint you're at is about to close. What song do you sing?
Oh, my God. You want the cool route or probably what I would really say internally? It would be something from either Les Mis, which I would never be able to carry because those ranges are wild, or my kids hate it when I do the intro to Beauty and the Beast. Belle's part. Yeah.
Cool. I guess we'll switch gears back into talking about California Inc. Is there anything else that you'd like our audience to know about California Inc.? Is there anything that we missed?
Anything about it that we missed? I think we covered a decent amount of it. Issue 2 really is where, for me, and I know Justin agrees, actually Dave and I talked about this too, is that's where the heart of the story starts to take place. The beginning, like you watch any show, they're trying to grab you and keep your attention to go, hey, there's something here, something happening. I think the heart of it starts in issue 2, and it continues on from there and really brings it all together. At least I believe so in the 4th issue. But issue 2, for me, I'm glad we're at the point where I'm seeing it. As we're getting in an elevator, I told Aaron, I was like, I just got page 6 in color. Mm-hmm. And it was a cool scene. It's good to see something I wrote 5 years ago coming together, and specifically these 2 characters, Big Sis and LB, and of course seeing the fierceness of Robin coming to life, and seeing Dave's iteration of them is something I'm excited to see and share with people, especially as we talk about representation. That's what I'm excited about. As an artist growing up, I always drew all my characters as one, they're all in superhero tights, with a cape, and there's nothing wrong with a character in being white, but that's all I knew. So I drew my characters being Caucasian. Nothing wrong with that, but that's all I knew. But seeing my kids these days, who are also artists, sorry, my wife is not, they get that all from me, but seeing them drawing characters that they see on TV, that they're making up, and also buying toys and characters that are of people of color. Again, nothing wrong with Caucasian characters, but seeing that option is important. So I want to make sure that was represented in my work too, because I never drew that. I never thought of writing that, and I'm able to do it because it's mine. So
I mean,
and give to our future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, especially where you like you said in the beginning of the podcast, you want to touch on where you grew up, and that's that's predominantly a lot of Filipinos in that area. It's only natural that you'd want to get that representation for your community as well.
100%, for sure. It's very important for us.
What other projects do you have in the pipeline that you can tell us about?
Oh, that I can tell you. Well, as I mentioned, Justin's we plan on doing after this series is done, which will be probably middle or end of next year, is where we're going to start kickstarting that one. Personally, I'm just my second year into being a writer-producer for production, so I'm still trying to enjoy that part of my life too. Specific projects there, I think I mentioned this. I'm in the middle of wrapping up, we're in the middle of editing a documentary about just kind of the crisis of the border through the eyes of an organization called Border Angels. So that's been kind of a wild project, is to finally see us editing, as we've been shooting for a little over 2 years now. So that's kind of a fun one to see kind of coming together. Not fun, because it's not a fun subject, but it's something that needs to be told. So that's kind of nice. Yeah.
If we were to move forward 5 years from now, I mean, where do you see yourself as a creator?
Oh, I actually hopefully have that planned the way I wanted to. So nothing against what I'm doing now for work, but if I could pull a Charlie Stickney and Chris Clow, I believe is his name. Yes, who's amazing books. These 2 guys have quit their jobs, and this is all they're doing, is surviving off of pushing their passion projects out, and making a living out of it, not because they want to make money, but because they want to make stories that they want to share with people, and people tend to enjoy their work. Being able to share work that I like, and being able to share that with my kids, because there is, again, that generational kind of thing that we learn from our parents who moved out here. You know, there's a lot of struggle to get here for our parents, and I don't want to squander that. And I could see why when they say, when you say like, I'm going to start a business, they're like, no, go get a job because that's safe, right? And there's nothing wrong with being a worker bee. But I want to show my kids that there's more than just being a worker bee. And there's nothing wrong, because my son wants to go into the world of animation and work under a brand, and that's great. And then, but my middle daughter, she picked up the entrepreneurial bug through her elementary school. They taught her this thing called entrepreneurial fair. She learned to create a conceptualizing to making, and then they all got together and sold her stuff. And she got the bug, and she's like, oh, I could be my own thing and like be my own boss. So that's where I want to be, is just make stuff. Who doesn't want that, right? Like also there's a part where it ebbs and flows and you don't have money coming in, but if I could just make work and just keep pushing it out. You guys are doing it with this podcast. You know, this is your stuff. No one else owns this but you two. Like, how cool. This is your content. You know, like, I want to follow you guys in that step too, you know?
Before we let you go, I sort of want to get your take on advice for up and coming creators. Specifically, the first one will be for graphic designers. If you were mentoring an up and coming graphic designer, what are some helpful tips that you would share to help set them up for success?
Oh, okay. I got that easily, because one of my favorite things to do is talk to students because I ran the internship department at the agency I worked at. One is, I don't care how pretty it is. If it didn't function, it failed. Because as a graphic designer, we are commissioned commercial artists. We're not fine artists. At that point, at the work we're doing, we're not fine artists. If you want to make beautiful work that people want because it's beautiful, go be a fine artist. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we're commercial artists who are being commissioned to make work that needs to function. So if it needs to make someone push a button and learn about something, it needs to do that. If it's gorgeous and make people go, wow, and they go, well, what was that for? It failed. You failed as an artist. You know what I mean? As a commissioned artist. The other one too about that for me is, there's two more things. Don't chase money. Go do something that makes you happy while you're doing it. Money will come later, because you're gonna find a niche that you're great at, and then people come to you for that. And then the other one is, as you mentioned earlier, collaborate. And again, this is commissioned work. Learn to collaborate, but also don't ever just find this balance, right? Aaron, you know this. It's like this weird thing where it's like you got to be able to take in and work with feedback, but also if you really fully believe in the decision you made for the client for that piece of work to function, you got to be able to stand up for it and say, no, this is what you hired me as your expert. I'm your expert. If you didn't need me, I wouldn't be in this room. I'm your expert. Here's why I believe this works, and I really stand up for it, and this is why. Be able to stand up for your work too.
Yep.
Yeah, but it better function. It better function.
Yeah. It's almost like I had Chris Do in the room. My second question is, what is something you learned along your comic book creating journey that you could impart to someone that is thinking about writing their own book?
Okay, so anybody here a runner? Not that I'm a runner anymore, but I used to be. The hardest part of training for running.
I'm a walker.
Yeah. is waking up in the morning and getting that first step out the door. Because you could put your outfit on, your running outfit, you could put on your shorts, your shoes, but you could go back to sleep. But as soon as you step out the door, you're like, I'm committed. I'm going. So start writing, and just like sketching, that was I think what broke it for me, is treating writing like sketching. You're allowed to sketch when you're writing, and by that I mean it doesn't have to be the perfect sentence right away. Just vomit it out and just carry a notebook with you and fill up those pages with your ideas, no matter how gibberish it looks to you. because half of writing is editing. Because once you get that stuff down on a page, that's half the battle. The next step is then editing those ideas into then a story. And you're like, I just wrote a page. And so one great example that somebody gave me was put everything away, close all the doors, no sounds, and literally for half an hour, whatever's coming out of your head, just keep typing and don't hit backspace, don't edit. Even if the words are, I don't know what I'm writing, I don't know what I'm writing. And then you start writing stuff about your story, like, and then she jumps on the horse. And then you start to go, well, that's kind of dumb, but actually type those words. After about a half hour, or an hour, excuse me, you have about 2-3 pages of just randomness. Go ahead and put that aside. And then like, let it stew in your head for a little bit, come back to it and edit those down to ideas. And at the very least, you have now an edited page of ideas, and you might even have a couple paragraphs. And guess what? You just wrote a couple paragraphs. So like the hardest part of writing is learning that it's kind of like sketching, and give yourself that grace that it's okay. It's not the best perfect sentence right there and then. It's just like sketching. You're just blurting stuff out because half of it's editing yourself. So.
And do you have a preferred time of the day to do your sketching for writing?
I wish it was during work hours, but I'm working. But most of us are night owls. Most creatives are night owls. And that's also not by choice, because I have a family of 3 kids that I just love to spending time with. I want to be there for them the way my dad wasn't. So that's important for me to not continue that cycle of being a not present father. So when they're asleep and my wife and I are done watching our show, when we fall asleep watching our show at night and she's asleep, then I'll try to write some more at night. But if I can sneak in some during the middle of the day, when nobody's around, because I mentioned earlier, I can't have any sound on, anybody talking. When she's downstairs working, because we both work from home, and she's talking, it's hard for me to write. When she's taking a call, it's like, can't do that.
Right. What are the best places to learn more about you and California?
Let's see. My Instagram is Art Ebuen. It's ARTE, B as in boy, UN as in Nancy. So, and then repeat that for Twitter. I'm definitely way more active on Instagram and now Threads. And actually, it's not called Twitter. It's called Twixter, is what I'm calling it.
Twixter.
But yeah, those are the 3 places you can find me. Otherwise, I'm not that active on LinkedIn as much as I should have been, and definitely not active on Facebook. That's for Philippines family. That's it. Just I'll post there like once every 3 months for them.
And the comic book has its own Instagram page, right?
You were great. Yeah, thanks for catching that. Specifically for the comic book, it's at California Inc. Inc. comic.com. So California Inc. comic. That's the Instagram handle. And then the handle for the publication, or the label, Studio 12-7, is something that I'm slowly growing as well. That's what Justin's comic book to me under as well. It's called Studio, the number 12, Studio 12, and then the actual dash, and then the number 7. Studio 12-7 is the Instagram handle for that.
What does that mean exactly?
Oh, good. I'm glad you asked. So that's purely for me. As you know, as a designer, you make brands that it's supposed to instantly connect. It doesn't, and I don't care. That's purely for me. And also, that's kind of my litmus test of how interested people really are in you. Kind of like when you go to your reunions that we all don't want to go to. It's usually someone asks you, how are you doing? What do you do? But they don't really care. They're waiting for their turn for you to ask them, right? And so thank you for asking, because that's a test for me to see how interested a person really is, because it's so obscure, 12-7. Back in my day, we had pagers. I don't know if you guys are in the same era.
I used to sell pagers.
Oh, dang, there you go. Shoot. Oh, man. And 12-7 was my code. Because the 1 and the 2 look like an R, and the 7's a T, so it's art.
Got it.
Right? And back in high school, I was in this class called Art Productions. And my supposed production name when I left high school, when I did freelance, was Art Productions. And then I turned it to 12-7 Productions. But now I'm in the world of production, and it's like 25 years later. I didn't want to use the word productions because it sounds too restricted to just like video production, and nothing wrong with that. And also you could infer from studio that it's a place to create and to make things. So under Studio 12/7, I hope to create a label for people to make stuff and not feel restricted. And also, for me, it could be a place for my production side of things to live too.
Nice. Well, Art, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
We'll definitely have to have you back on again.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, can I ask you some questions?
Sure.
Can we talk more about something?
Go ahead.
I want to ask you too. I mean, I don't know if this is just your thing, but Filipino American Con. Tell me more.
Philam Creator Con.
Yeah, Philam Creator Con. So
Yeah.
tell me, this is my turn asking you questions. So I've been watching you slowly building this thing, and it's fascinating. And I want to learn more from the source. Tell me more about it.
All right. Well, we've talked about San Diego Comic Con in this podcast. 1 year back in 2019, I had just gone to Scott Lost's panel, an accidental aliens panel, and we were just catching up outside, as one might do, talking to the people that were on the panel, and then my friend Corinne, she walks by, and she's a really prolific community organizer, and she's an educator, and we took some pictures, right? And so it wasn't until later I was looking at the pictures, and then this one picture I was like, wow, wouldn't it be cool if we had a Filipino version of Filipino American version of San Diego Comic Con, and that's where it started. So I contacted Corinne, Alex, and my friend Oliver, Scott, Vince Alvendia, and
Egg drop ramen.
Yeah.
Cool dude.
Alicia Ricafrente, she volunteers at San Diego Comic Con as well, and Susan and Pizzo Vega. She was working at a library at the time, the Chula Vista, the South Chula Vista Library on Orange, and then we met a couple of times in 2019, and then the pandemic hit, and we were all set to have the first one, I think, in 2020.
Oh no!
And then so we kind of just put that on pause for obvious reasons, and then 2022, 2023, we kind of thought, let's try to see if we can get the gang back together, and so we started having meetings again. We all kept in touch with each other,
right on.
and so so thank you for asking. And then we're the date that we're aiming for is for our inaugural event is. I think it's September 16th, 2024.
Oh, nice. That's in 5 weeks.
I think it's the 14th, I think.
14th?
Yeah.
14th is a Thursday, I believe.
No, next year.
Oh, next year.
Yeah,
okay,
next year.
I'm already thinking,
Yeah.
that's in 3 weeks.
No.
Whoa, dude.
Yeah. And so that's the date we're shooting for. We're still trying to nail down a venue.
Yeah.
We sort of want to stay within the National City kind of area. But we do have our first mixer.
Yeah.
It's coming up. That'll be Saturday, September 16th at the Market on 8th in National City.
Right on.
So if you don't have anything going on that day, we would love to have you there.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So it's a chance for the community to get to know us and hopefully get to know some of the creators that will be there as well. So we don't want to make the first one too big. We just want to make it, small and intimate and something that we can get started with and grow and see, what the community will, see what they say and how they want to how they want to participate as well, because we want to get their input as well. So that's one reason for the mixer, and that's the reason why we want to keep it small at first. So
I love that it's consistent with your goal to elevate people who aren't getting the limelight. That's really cool. I like that. Mm-hmm. And you're right. We don't have anything like that. That's really admirable. That's cool.
Thank you.
Smart. Yeah.
So we're looking forward to it. And sky's the limit, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the Zarlitos parking lot. No.
Zarlitos. Okay. Well, Zarlitos is a. It used to be a pretty cool, all night Filipino eatery, late night, up until the morning. It's a place that we would go to after we go clubbing, and they would serve all, some of the Filipino favorites. They had adobo there, and then all the egg.
The silogs.
Yeah, silogs. So what was your favorite silog?
Oh man, that's all. Okay, so I have an existential view on food, so I would probably say I try to avoid it as much as possible. So if I could pick one, maybe tapsilog. Yeah, but
Okay.
probably
That's a good
haven't had
choice.
that in like
Yeah.
15 years. Just yeah. How about you guys?
Tapsilog's always good.
Mine's a lung slug.
Oh my gosh.
Because my mom used to make tapa all the time.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm used to her style of tapa. A little bit of sour, vinegary.
Yeah. Oh man.
Lung slug was mine at Sarlitos.
There you go.
And fried calamari was good too.
Oh, do they? I didn't even know they had that there.
Yeah.
All right. Wow. Very cool. So how many years has Hall H been going now?
Was it 2014?
The blog
When
started.
yeah.
in
Going on your
2014.
10-year anniversary.
Almost, yeah.
What's do you have anything planned for the, or is that going to be like part of the celebration? And
I don't know. We don't. Have
you got to do something for the 10. You got to do something for
We'll
the 10.
we'll think of something.
Yeah.
Something special to do.
Maybe that's when Aaron shows us his first comic book.
Oh. and then we started the podcast in 2016.
Oh, okay. So you get technically a couple more years, and if you want to.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. The brand itself started almost 10 years ago. That's huge, man. You guys, that's huge. I mean, I think it used to be if your company lasts, and I know it's not a company, but if you could stick together as a band, even know, after like the first few years, but going on double digits, good for you two. That's awesome. That's great.
I read something when we first started the podcast that if you make it past your 7th podcast, and you have a good chance of, extending or actually building your podcast to a longer life. So,
yeah.
So we've definitely gone past 7.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I mean, although we don't have the consistency that I'd like, but at the very least, we promote on social media.
Yeah.
Other people that we follow.
Yeah.
As much as we can.
Yeah.
So, it's just due to personal life and things that come up.
Of course.
It's hard to keep that consistency, man.
Yeah.
But it's cool when we go to shows and somebody will come up and say, hey, listen to podcast, whatever it was. And I ended up getting that person's books. So
Right on. That's cool. It's again, you're elevating people. That's great. And that's completely selfless, which is nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's always a good feeling when we meet those people who just happen to randomly just, hey, thanks for that podcast or, that episode.
Nice.
Cool. I guess, do you have any other questions?
No, I mean, I'm glad I got to actually meet you two. I mean, we've said hi in passing, like I said, and it's kind of
we've known each other for years, but not really sit down and
yeah.
converse.
Yeah, I'm sure this will be the first of many conversations.
Yeah, I hope so. Hope to like you said, help anybody else too, wherever I can. That's kind of something that I'm passionate about too. Anything I could share.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here to hide anything. Yeah.
Love it. I love that attitude, man.
Cool.
Alex, you want to close out the show?
All right, sure. All right, thank you for listening to the Hall H Show podcast, and thanks to our guest, Arthur Ebuen. As you know, we love putting the spotlight on independent pop culture creatives like Arthur. Please make sure you check out his Kickstarter campaign for his comic book, California Inc., which ends on September 15th, 2023. If you have any suggestions for potential guests, please let us know by reaching out to us on social media or by filling out our contact form on our website, hallh.com. If you believe in our mission to be the voice of independent creators, we would appreciate a rating, hopefully 5 stars, and a comment on Apple Podcasts. And please spread a word on social media using the hashtag HallHShow.
Lastly, we are helping to organize a small convention called PhilAm CreatorCon in 2024 that will celebrate Filipino-American pop culture creators. If you are in the San Diego, California area on Saturday, September 16th, 2023, we will be holding a mixer for this event where you can get to know the planning committee and a few of the creators that will be attending. For more information, please go to philamcreatorcon.com/mixer. Peace, cheers, and stay safe out there.